we'll troubleshoot that and we'll get you video started.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Greetings, everyone. I see that there are over 50 members of the public, it looks like, who are in virtual attendance here. Let me just do a quick roll call of the board and formally open this April 2020 meeting of the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh. I think Representative Gainey is in another commitment and unable to join us today. He may join late, but Councilman Lavelle is here, I believe. Yep, I see you.
Here.
Director Hirsch looks like is on.
Here. Yep.
And Director Powell is also on.
Here.
Yep, there you are. You're muted, Lindsay.
I am?
Yep, there, now you're unmuted.
Great, thank you.
Yep. So let the record show that we have a quorum. I just wanted, before we get into the actual agenda of our meeting, want to take a minute to send our thoughts and best wishes out to everyone in the community in Pittsburgh and beyond who is suffering in one way or another at this time. You know, I know within my union, within 32BJ, we've already lost more than 50 members across our union. Thousands more are sick and hospitalized, and many thousands more beyond that have lost their jobs as a result of the COVID epidemic, which has only gotten worse since our last URA meeting. And seems a little odd to take a moment of silence when we're on a virtual meeting in which most people are muted to begin with. But I just want to start by, acknowledging the tremendous amount of pain and suffering, that is happening in communities and families and workplaces all across the city and all across this country. And to simply say that we are continuing on with these board meetings and we are continuing on with the work of the URA because there is a small role for us to play in helping Pittsburgh residents and Pittsburgh businesses navigate these incredibly trying and challenging times. And there will be a large role for us to play on the other side of this public health crisis as we rebuild together. And, right now we are exercising solidarity by staying apart, but the time will come when we can exercise solidarity again by rebuilding together. And, we will be reminded constantly of the words of Mother Jones, and mourn for the dead and fight like hell for the living. So I don't know if any other board members or anybody wants to say anything to sort of acknowledge the moment that we're in before we jump into the agenda. Correct, Diamante or Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe we received any formal public comment in advance of today's meeting.
No, we did not.
Okay. So for members of the public who are participating in this meeting on Zoom, the email that you can use to submit comment, if you have it throughout this meeting, is on your screen. It's publiccomment@ura.org. Public comment, all one word, @ura.org. You can submit public comment there, throughout this meeting or afterwards, and we'll capture it for the record. You can also use the chat function if you want to try to submit a question or a comment as the meeting goes on, and we'll try to capture it to the best of our ability. First actual regular order of business is simply the approval of the meeting minutes from the regular board meeting of March 2020. I think we got board members need to unmute themselves.
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We don't have that many voting items actually on the agenda today, so we'll see if we can capture the votes without doing individual voice votes records of every single issue. We do have a significant number of announcements, beginning with the request for proposals for the Greater Hill Master Plan update, which I think Nick Fedoruk is going to talk about.
Yes, this is Nick Fedoruk. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you want to get a little closer to your mic?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Fedoruk. I'm the manager of planning and development. This is an announcement of RFP for the Greater Hill Master Plan update. This is an announcement that in the future we will be releasing the RFP. The RFP is not finalized yet. We are working with the Department of City Planning, and Andrew Dash is also here as a panelist to answer questions from the city planning component. The URA is collaborating to update the September 2011 plan. This plan needs acceptance by the city of Pittsburgh to be considered its neighborhood plan to guide public and private investment throughout the neighborhood. And you can see in the map that this is the general scope, the geographic area that the plan will cover. This is, the exact release of this plan is to be determined. The release of the RFP is also TBD. The RFP language and community process is still being finalized by the stakeholders. The exact contents may change subject to the community process. It also may be affected by the COVID-19 pandemic because as of now, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get the robust community engagement process that we would need to do for a neighborhood plan during this time. The URA is going to be managing this contract, but city planning will be handling the project management and coordination. The content of the plan will include things such as land use, transportation, and other components as determined by the Department of City Planning that will need to be updated from the 2011 plan. A steering committee will be established and will start meeting in the summer or fall of 2020. The co-chairs of this committee will be Marimba Malayans of the Hill CDC and Councilman Daniel Lavelle. There's additional info on the Department of City Planning's website. And Andrew Dash is here in attendance as well if anyone has any questions for City
Okay. Any questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
The next announcement is around request for qualifications in partnership with neighborhood allies. Tom Link is going to discuss this.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm going to leave the video off because I'm holding my phone close to my face, and I don't think the public needs to see it close to my face. I'm trying to read off of my laptop at the same time, so I apologize for that in advance. Yeah, so this announcement relates to, as we all know, with the in response to the COVID crisis and a variety of efforts, and we'll talk about, I think, more of them later. A real need, especially for many of our small businesses and our micro enterprise businesses, especially our Main Street retail and food-based businesses, is really being more robust and capable in terms of e-commerce and connecting with customers electronically, not just in sort of the near term, but probably the long term as the effects of COVID, continue to have impacts across, frankly, consumer behavior into going inside of stores and restaurants. That said, one of the things we're working on is with Neighborhood Allies is a program that we're Neighborhood Allies in partnership with the URA calling Get Online and Grow Online Small Business Program. A request for qualifications was released actually this week. It's due Monday the 20th next week at 5 o'clock for folks to respond to help us build this program to support these businesses. A couple of key components of this will be, some webinars that will be created to help folks create capacity, through the use of, working through webinars and watching webinars. We are also planning on sort of more engaged direct technical assistance to help specific individual businesses, to be more robust in their e-commerce capabilities. I'm happy to answer any further questions, but that's the announcement as it relates to that.
That's great. Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
You want to just move right into the
Yeah,
next
sure.
one on the childcare?
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the board. And before I get into this, just a thanks to a Councilwoman, Deb Gross, and all of our partners over at the city to, frankly, help us with some funding to help get this moving along. But so this is a request for proposals for technical assistance providers to support the URA's efforts, and again, partnership with the city and really with the leadership of the Councilwoman, to provide more directed technical support to childcare providers and really sort of smaller local childcare providers. I think as many know, the childcare business, I mean, as an industry, it's pretty complex. And a number of the folks who are key to providing the capacity in terms of childcare industry locally are often very, very small businesses and micro enterprises really. But the complexities of engaging in that business can be quite daunting, frankly, from licensing and inspections. I mean, at some very basic level, anybody who's had their children or know children who go to childcare facilities, it's there's very specific things that you have to have in place, and licensing and cash flow management, even in terms of how one gets paid if there's various state and federal funding sources involved. So it can be quite complex. So the spirit here is to get technical assistance support that we would provide directly to childcare providers in the city to help build this technical assistance. Of course, leading to in working with our existing, micro enterprise loan program and other URA loan programs to help make those connections, to provide not just capital for an individual childcare provider to start and grow, but also again this technical assistance. So that's the that's this announcement. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great overview. I just want to underscore or reiterate, the shout out to Councilwoman Gross. This is money that was allocated in the city's budget specifically for this purpose, and Councilwoman Gross really led the charge to allocate those funds for this purpose. We obviously have a lot of experience and have had a lot of success in doing small business lending and in recent years, micro lending to small businesses. This is specific money that'll be available for childcare providers to improve their physical locations and their business performance. And we want to make sure there's frankly a lot of folks, I think a lot of experts who don't think that we will succeed in this, and just acknowledge that publicly. We think they're wrong. We think we can do this. Council council agrees. We want to make sure that we get this right. And so we're taking this step of getting some expert technical assistance as we set this up so that we can actually do this well, do it the right way, and make sure that this program really succeeds. Next up, we're going to talk, I think, a bunch about what the URA is doing and has done over recent weeks to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. And I think Executive Director Greg Flisserman is going to talk us through this, right? Greg, you're on mute.
Yep.
There you go.
I'm off mute now. Okay. Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I think we posted earlier a memo for the board to review that kind of outlines all the responses that the URA have been involved in, either leading or helping support throughout the city. And basically, they boil down to like four or five different buckets. So allocating internal resources to provide emergency business and housing support. We've stood up $3.1 million of emergency loan funds. We've received some matching funds from foundations and at least one bank, and we continue to hunt for additional resources. The emergency loan fund, and Tom can talk about it a little bit later, is really intended to be a bridge funding mechanism to help support small businesses who are waiting for potentially small business administration funds, Fed funds, and recently the state's working capital access program. But we have deployed $3.1 million of funds. We are now oversubscribed and are in a place where we may have to close the fund because of the need is outstripping our ability to fund that those particular funds. It also includes $1.7 million of new HSP, Housing Stabilization Program money, to help homeowners and renters in need of assistance who are affected directly by the COVID pandemic. And we are continuing to work to identify additional sources of funds for those programs. We've also been definitely involved in the technical assistance side of things, as Tom just mentioned. We are also, besides providing technical assistance in the realm of online business and e-commerce, also trying to get folks prepped for being able to apply for some of these funds coming down from the Small Business Administration. Hopefully those funds will continue. We've also put together I think a very nice COVID web portal resource page where people can go to get, and a resource guide where people can go to get information on various funding sources and technical assistance support systems, and a resource guide that goes with that. And we've also deferred fees and deferred payments on all our loan products. So part of our first effort here was to say, right from the outset, we're going to defer payments on all our existing loan customers. And then onto that, the new emergency funds, we basically have waived all interest and all fees on those funds. So we're doing our best to get our money out there, help replenish those funds, and again, provide a liaison between our resources, what we can provide locally, and what is available through the state and federal level. And before I go any further, I guess maybe that's probably all I really wanted to say, but I really wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge a few folks on our staff that have really done, I think, sensational work on this. Jessica Smith-Perry and Jennifer Wilhelm, the co-heads of our new lending and investment department, have been spectacular in this effort. Tom Link, you just heard from, has been instrumental in not only just talking about the passion and the urgency behind doing this early on before anybody else really moved on it, but being one of the first folks to really put forward ideas, not just on how we respond to this from an emergency standpoint, but what do we do 4 or 5, 6 months from now when we have to rebuild and recover the economy. Tom has put himself and the URA in the middle of a regional conversation that we hope to continue to elevate on a recovery fund down the road. So just want to acknowledge those folks who've done, again, really passionate, urgent work in this field, and I'm very, very proud to be working with them. That's all I had.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is we'll see this again later in the agenda when we get into some grant approvals, but I think this is also a good place to acknowledge the outside partnerships that have allowed us to fund some of this work, grants from, I think, Pittsburgh Foundation, Hillman Foundation, and Citizens Bank, right?
Right.
And probably also a good moment to call on Pittsburgh-based businesses and financial institutions to join us in this work.
Yeah,
These are admittedly high-risk loans that we're entering into, but this is the right thing to do to try to keep small businesses afloat and keep workers employed as we weather this crisis. And the public sector should not be the only ones taking the risk, in my opinion, to do that. We've all got a stake in making sure that our economy weathers this crisis as well as can possibly be imagined. And providing this emergency short-term assistance is a critical component of that. We are calling on, frankly, Pittsburgh-based businesses and financial institutions to step up to the plate and join us in this work. And I know we've had conversations with a number of them to begin to do that. But, we need, you see on your screen right now that, we've got a funding gap for the demand that we already know exists, and the applications that we've already received. We know the demand is only getting greater, and frankly, far probably outpaces what we already are aware of. We need more partners in this work, and we need more funds to be able to keep these businesses afloat.
Sam, on that note, I would just mention that the Paycheck Protection Program is already frozen from the federal government. As a small business owner, I found that out the hard way. So, all the more need for others to step up here. Yeah,
I mean, I think staff and leadership of the URA have done a great job of identifying every dollar that we could possibly redeploy to this purpose. You know, but you know, you can see the $200,000 from Citizens Bank on there. Not to do any geographic shaming, but I'm pretty sure they're based in Philadelphia, not in Pittsburgh. We've got some Pittsburgh-based financial institutions that we need to see on this chart next month. Is there there we go, the housing dashboard. Tom, you want to talk us through this, Tom Link?
That will actually be Jessica Smith-Perry. Jessica, if you could cover this one.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so this is basically summarizing our Housing Stabilization Program, Emergency COVID Program. As Greg stated, on March 23rd, we opened up the program with $300,000 at HOF demonstration dollars. Within 2 weeks, the Urban League had more than 500 inquiries, and they started to process them. More than a third of them lived outside the city, but they have processed 50 to date, and they're working on another 231 clients that will get hopefully checks in the next couple weeks. But we recognize that we couldn't keep it up at that rate. The Urban League had to bring in another 40 extra volunteers to process at that rate. So the URA staff has been working really hard with our other HSP providers, which are YWCA, Macedonia Faith, and Pittsburgh Mercy, and the Urban League was one of the original four as well. And together, all four of them are ready to mobilize with more volunteers and more staff next week. So we're going to continue to source the program through our regular HSP dollars funded by the Housing Opportunity Fund. And we also got the contract finalized with United Way's 211. So they will serve as the intake coordinator for the program, actually they started this week, taking the intakes and forwarding them to the providers. So with the current year HOF money and the other additional $1 million coming from the 2020 HOF money, we should be in a position to keep operating and helping the victims of the COVID crisis for a little while longer.
Thank you. This is just a list of resources, right?
Yeah, so we early put a portal together, a resource page on COVID, and it's updated daily where we link to upcoming webinars. We have these dashboards posted. We even have a COVID hotline where you can phone in or email in a question, and we'll get somebody to direct you in the right way. So there's event issue information, and just a constantly updated series of articles and resource links for people who are needing assistance. And the resource guide, I think, is a real nice way of breaking that down. So you're not just hitting a page with all kinds of just reams and reams and pages of words and data, but you actually are directed specifically to resources that are would address your particular need, whether you're a homeowner or a small business. So I would encourage you to visit it. It is updated daily. And our staff, I think, has done a really good job keeping this, designing it and keeping it updated.
Yeah, this is a great resource. And in some cases, existing programs have gone virtual to be able to remain operational, right? Tom Link is going to talk about a couple.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and Greg and Diamante. Yeah, just briefly. So Gallery on Penn, I think folks are, the board and most folks are aware of the Catapult program and the Gallery on Penn location that, we're proud to have partnered with Circles Greater Pittsburgh and Tammy Thompson and Paramount and others to establish this really as a, an incubator program and sort of a ramp up and startup space for, minority and women-owned businesses, mostly in sort of, I'd say, the Main Street and sort of lifestyle business space. So Gallery on Penn's been operating, as with all small businesses, And those, as Mr. Chair, you mentioned, have moved virtually. We're proud to have, we're working with Gallery on Penn to allow the businesses at Gallery on Penn to be virtual. We've establishing online sites for each of the businesses. We've contracted with one of our microloan technical assistance providers, actually also a Catapult participant, so kind of helping in all fronts there. IT's for me to assist the folks at Gallery on Penn to establish and bolster their online presence. Actually, in some ways, I would say this is a microcosm of what we're trying to achieve with the previous item I talked about with the sort of Get Online program with Neighborhood Allies. I'd say what we're doing at Gallery on Penn is that, and we're hoping to take the success we're having with Gallery on Penn in this way and ramp it out to more businesses across the city. So, but that's just an announcement and to let folks that this is happening. Folks can go to the URA webpage. It's actually the first thing you'll see, I think, if you go to our webpage right now. To see to visit the businesses at Gallery on Penn, and I encourage folks to transact with the businesses there. So thank you.
Sure. There's a question on the chat stream. I don't know if we can take just a second to address the question, but seems to relate to what the projected response time is on small business loans and the relationship between the work that we're doing and the DCD programs. Tom,
yeah.
Or please, can you see that on there?
I actually can't, but I can maybe try to answer that. So
Okay.
Starting with response times on the URA program or the state's program?
So let me just read it to you. So
Yeah,
on a
sure.
call I made to the DCD representative identified that follow-up on any application would be done to each applicant in 2 to 4 weeks from the day of application by the local organization, which they're being told is the URA in this case. Wanted to confirm what applicant notification timeline may be applicable, and or if an applicant should be proactively contacting the URA in order to alleviate pressures or overload on the organization.
I'd say a couple of things. The first is, yeah, please contact us. So, I mean, just to give some context, so if we're talking about the state's, the CWSA program, the COVID Working Capital Assistance Program, that had been open for about 4 days and closed. The URA is one of the state's certified economic development organizations that can process these state loans, as there are others, frankly, across the state and even in the region. I'd say a couple of things. One, you should, whoever's listening and the person asking this question in particular, please reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly, and I'll make sure to get into the hands of the right folks, and we'll be in contact. Actually, one of the things we're doing right now is, to the extent, we don't know what's going to happen, but to the extent the state's program opens up again, what we're working on is working with individual folks who had already started applications and to have them be prepared, frankly, to be immediately sent should the program open up again. So I would encourage, that if that person, whoever is asking the question, wants to reach out, we can certainly do that. And obviously connect them with other resources. I mean, the CWSA, the state's program is closed right now, so it's not an option. And as Board Member Hirsch just mentioned, the SBA program is not accepting any more applications. So, we would, the emergency loan fund, which is the URA's program, we can, talk to folks about that as well. So, we're trying to be as responsive as possible. I think it's certainly within 2 weeks, but probably just within days, we can we're able to be responsive to folks who are inquiring to us.
Thanks. We'll share. I just shared your email with the woman who asked the question on the chat there.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. There are, I don't know, I think last number I saw was that there are 22 million Americans now unemployed who have applied for unemployment across the country within the last 4 weeks, more than 600,000 active cases of COVID around the country, and rapidly approaching 30,000 deaths. So this crisis is not going anywhere anytime soon, and this work is really critical to trying to keep people afloat as we get through it, and is only going to be more important as we get to the other side of this. So thank you for that great summary and for all the work that staff and leadership of the URA are doing.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yep. I think the next announcement is around the Neighborhood Initiatives Fund. Emily Mitchell is going to walk us through this.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm here today to announce that the Neighborhood Initiative Fund round for 2020 is now open. Applications were opened on April 2nd and they're due on June 1st. The Neighborhood Initiative Fund, or NIF, is a program intended to assist nonprofit community-based organizations with neighborhood scale projects that really expand neighborhood and Main Street revitalization efforts. As part of this round, up to 25% of grant funds can be used for operational costs or admin costs for those organizations that are affected or facing hardships due to COVID-19. So staff are hosting 3 webinars about the grant. So 2 webinar sessions have actually already happened, but the next session is scheduled for next Wednesday, April 22nd at noon. But I also do want to note that we will be posting a recording of one of these sessions onto the website for any interested applicants who can't make a live session.
Great, thank you. And then the next, I think we're going to have a much longer presentation on a takedown briefing on an item that is not on our agenda for action today, but that will be in a month. So it's a Lower Hill briefing, development team update and takedown briefing for the next phase of the Lower Hill 28 acres development. Let me just remind folks, for each parcel on the 28 acres that the Penguins development group wants to begin action on, it comes to the URA for approval, and it goes to the Sports and Exhibition Authority for approval. And last year, when the first 2 parcels were started moving for this development, our board decided that we would add an additional step for the purposes of public transparency and encouraging public input into this process. That's out of recognition for the frankly, historic importance of this development and the opportunity that this development poses to really incorporate neighborhood input and into the development process and make sure that this development really reflects what residents of the Hill District want to see out of development on this public land. And so what we're doing today is honoring that commitment. This is a briefing. We're not voting on anything today. We really strongly encourage Hill District residents and stakeholders and members of the community to provide input directly to us over the course of the next month, both with the public comment at ura.org email address and by reaching out directly to the URA. So this is really critical that we actually hear from members of the public about about this next phase of this development. So with that said, I think Nathan Clark is going to walk through this presentation together with Kevin Acklin from the Penguins and Boris from PBG.
Thank you. This is Nathan. That was really well said. I was just going to provide some context, but Chairman, I think you summed it up very well. This is not a vote today. It's a briefing. The briefing will focus on 2 main areas. One is the development that the board will be asked to consider at its next meeting. And that is the development on Block G, which is a parcel that's owned by the SEA. And it's the parcel that's closest to the in-progress CAP project. The second part of this briefing today will be an update from the development team on some of the things that the board has asked them to focus on and look into since the last vote. So just so the board's aware, the items that URA staff will be asking you to consider at the next meeting will be preliminary approval of takedown notice for Block G1 and preliminary approval of a developer. So prior to any closing or conveyance, the board will have a second vote on those items. With that, I will turn it over to Kevin and Boris. I know they've prepared a summary for today, and just want to take a minute to thank both of them for their continuing work on this, and also to thank board member and council member Lavelle, who continues to bring everyone to the table to work through issues that are new and issues that carry over. So it's been a lot of work to get to this point, and I'll turn it over to Kevin and Boris now.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me well enough?
Yep. Hi, Kevin.
Great. Good afternoon. Hey, Sam. Thank you, Nathan, for that, and Chair Williamson for your very helpful introduction. First and foremost, I just want to thank the board, URA, members of the city for being leaders on this COVID response. I know, all the different elements and how difficult things have been dealing with health issues as well as the economic impact. And on behalf of the Penguins, we're committed. We've been spending all of our time as a staff trying to be present and relevant to the community. We hosted a food bank distribution last Friday. We'll be scheduling another one as soon as next Friday on the Lower Hill, working with our community. So if there's anything you feel that we can do, anything at all, no matter how big or small, please let me or Tracy McCants Lewis know. We want to be supportive as much as possible to help everybody get through this. And we've certainly started the conversation with the URA and with FNB, First National Bank, who is our prospective tenant here for this proposed development that we're about to review with you, about them becoming a partner for the emergency loan program. Diamante and Greg have done a really good job, and we're trying to get a meeting scheduled, and I have a follow-up this afternoon right after this one. So again, on behalf of our team, anything we can do to be more helpful, we're just a phone call or a text away. And just want to thank the board, the community. We have are really at the starting line here for what we think can be a very big part of this development with the F&B Tower on Parcel G. If you recall, in the fall, of course, we had preliminary approval for 2 other development parcels on Block B with our development partner Energen, as well as on Block E with BPG and Boris Kaplan. I'll hand it over to in a couple minutes for a garage and a live music venue. This office tower represents a commitment from FNB to the city, but also to the Hill District. And I think as we go through this presentation, hopefully you'll see that this isn't just about building a building in the Lower Hill District. This is about a bank relocating its headquarters to the Hill District and coming up with a community impact program with a number of direct investments above and beyond the LRTA capture, which we think will generate several $1 millions for direct investment into the greater and middle and upper Hill District, but a number of specific programs that we're working on with FNB and agencies and partners in the Hill District to maximize that impact of locating their headquarters here. And I give credit to Councilman Lavelle. He's really set the bar high from the very beginning on this overall development, and working with him, Representative Wheatley, the mayor's office. We're very pleased to be at this point to provide an update on where we stand. And so, and with that, I'd like to hand it over to Boris Kaplan from Buccini Polling Group to walk us through an update on this proposed development.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Just wanted to confirm that people can hear me as I'm about to start here.
Yeah, we got you.
Great. I want to thank the board and thank everyone who's on this call and has been working to support the project and really going the extra mile here over the past 30 days as we've worked remotely, but still have worked efficiently to advance a very important and clearly a catalytic project for the Lower Hill redevelopment overall. I think I want to recognize that this is just a briefing, as Nathan had mentioned earlier, and so I'll try to be as brief as I can. We did prepare a bunch of slides that summarize the project and begin to outline some of the key public impacts and and some of the engagement efforts that we've pursued over the past many months as we've gone through pre-development on this project. But I'll try to move through this material pretty quickly, and certainly promise to be available both after these prepared remarks, and then also as we prepare for preliminary takedown in May to answer any additional questions that come up. Goal for today would be just to quickly confirm project programming and some of the design elements. We're going to go through a summary of impacts, and then just finish with a summary of our community engagement efforts. We may actually want to start. I don't control the cursor, and I don't control the presentation, but for the person that does, if you would be so kind as to advance to slide 7 for the folks watching the video through Zoom. Go to slide 7.
What you'll need to tell me when to stop.
Yep, just a couple more. It's just 2 more slides there. Perfect. Let's stop right there. If you can go back a slide, please. So for folks who can see the slide in front of them, and maybe for those that cannot, can try to go back. There it is. I just wanted to start with a quick overview of the project of really the 28-acre district, because we're going to be talking a lot about blocks E, block G, block B, and I thought it might be a useful place just to quickly start with a review of the various blocks. We were in front of the URA and the FCA back in the fall and secured our preliminary approvals for the block E development. That's the garage and music venue, as well as retail liner. We do have some updates and have made some interesting progress on that project recently. People will note that in early March, we announced Live Nation as the operator for the music venue, and are certainly excited about the future of that project. I think today, the subject property is just across Logan Street in the direction of the Cap Park that is being developed by the SCA and the Department of Transportation. On the G block, at the corner of Washington Place and Bedford, there's a vision for a very iconic and very important mixed-use building, and that is what we envision to be anchored by F&B as their future headquarters, and we're very excited about the progress on that project as well. So hopefully that was just a real quick primer on the overall development. I think most of the folks on this call can track our discussion of the various blocks. So if we could maybe just head back to slide 4, and I can kind of walk through the project timeline and provide an update on where things stand. So as many on this call have already mentioned, there's certainly an important response underway to the coronavirus crisis. We expect that to continue both in the public sector and also in our private real estate development circles. But in spite of those uncertain conditions, we still expect to break ground in the second half of this year on both the E block and the G block for these projects. The block E project did go through the preliminary approval process first, but the block G project has advanced more quickly with the selection of an architecture team and a construction manager to advance that project. And certainly with what we're doing now as far as the takedown of block G, we're just catching up to the head start that block E enjoyed just a few months earlier. I will say also on this project timeline that we're showing here in 2020 that we're really continuing the work that we started last year in identifying contractors who are capable in assisting the 3 phases of the project, both in pre-development, in construction, and ultimately in the operations of these properties. And so that important work continues. Next slide, please. The next slide is a more granular update of the next steps on the Block G project. In March, we submitted the formal takedown notice for Block G, and certainly today is another milestone in that effort. And we expect that we're very much on track for a May preliminary approval by both the SCA and URA for these efforts. We understand that there's certainly conditions and additional reviews that are continuing, and we're excited to support those efforts. I will say the next 90 to 100 days, even with folks working remotely, will be a busy time for the project as we complete additional reviews with the planning department, as we work on transportation and mobility matters, both pedestrian and vehicular, around the G block, and then continue our efforts with the community for sure, both through the public process that will be taking place in June with the RCO meetings, but also we've been engaged for the last several months in updating the CSIP, Executive Management Council, on the project, and most recently have been working with the Hill CDC's development panel review process to update additional stakeholders in the Hill on the development and the engagement process. Where this is all going to is a financial closing and a takedown that we envision being completed in the second half of this year. The target is October presently. We hope to be under construction in November. If we're able to do that, we expect that construction will take between 26 and 29 months, and the very first floors of occupancy can be delivered in late 2022, possibly very, very early in 2023. Next slide, please. As Kevin mentioned, we are working with the Pittsburgh Penguins and with First National Bank on this important project. We've identified Gensler to lead the design effort. Gensler has been very involved with master planning for the entire district and has been incredibly instrumental in advancing the concept designs for the F&B Tower. I think Gensler is a name that's recognized in and across Pittsburgh for large-scale projects of exceeding quality. Gensler is also recognized for their incredible commitment to the community engagement process, which they've been instrumental in leading for Block G and other elements of the commercial redevelopment. Next slide, please. Just a quick update regarding some of our efforts to be out in front of the community related to updates for the project. We've held a number of in-person large open forum meetings to update progress on the master plan development and on the various commercial and residential projects. We couldn't do so in end of March when we had planned to have our next public meeting, but we were able to record an update on the project related to this Block G tower development, and we posted that to YouTube and then created a newsletter around all of that important content that we were able to distribute to the community, both to our contacts, to the stakeholders on the CSIP EMC, and we reached out to the faith-based organizations in the Hill as well to get further visibility of this update. Thank you. Next slide, please. We can go past this one. Thank you. So taking us behind the initial massing diagrams for the master planning efforts, on the screen you can see the current rendering for the F&B Financial Center. I think in the earlier remarks, I saw a reference to a 24-story tower. I think we've updated those plans between the letter of intent and now the takedown notice. Current plans are for a 26-story tower that is 400 feet tall. That's 400 feet tall to the top of the highest occupiable floor. There's a beautiful crown treatment, as you can see in the rendering, that makes the tower even taller than that. Of course, this project is not just a tall, iconic tower, but it's also a chance to develop a very exciting plaza area around the tower's base. The vision for this project delivers a great destination public open space that not only exceeds the requirements of the PLDP that's in place, but certainly meets our expectations for a great destination location that could be enjoyed by people who are tenants in the buildings, by members of the adjacent neighborhoods, and from people from across the region, whether they're coming for a game day or taking advantage of some of the other amenities that are being built out across the site. Also just wanted to mention some of the other kind of key programming elements. There's about 21 stories of space dedicated to office tenants. That accounts for about 430,000 square feet of total office space. In the podium, there's 2 floors of dedicated retail space, about 20,000 square feet. And then there's also 110 space public parking garage. It's a garage that's part of the Lower Hill Parking District. And we certainly don't expect it to offset all of the required parking for the tower. There's a significant structured parking facility that's being developed on Block E, and we see these as very complementary projects. The office users and other retail tenants in this tower create demand for the parking facility that's being developed on Block E. The Block E parking facility benefits from the demand for parking that's generated by the construction of this tower. Collectively, you have a great catalyst on both the E block and the G block for the broader redevelopment. I will just note in relation to the parking that in the fall, we did secure approvals for a parking tax diversion for Block E. We would seek the same for this next phase of the Lower Hill Parking District on Block G. Next slide. So we had an earlier rendering that showed the view of the F&B Financial Center from the downtown. I think equally important is the view of the development from the adjacent neighborhood, from the intersection of Crawford Street and Wiley Avenue. I think we can see that the tower is largely massed to the right of the screen, tight towards Bedford Avenue. It really preserves a central pedestrian and view corridor down Wiley Avenue, and we're very excited about all the development that will occur along Wiley to make that much more pedestrian friendly and much more lively. But again, we recognize that there's significant scale of this development, 26 stories and over 500,000 gross square feet, but we feel that it's done it in a sensitive way, and in a way that preserves the views of the downtown, but also the views of the hill from the downtown. Again, just wanted to highlight that not only is this a development of buildings, mixed-use buildings, but really there's a vision that's being built around all of the open space across the site, all the way from the Cap Park up towards Crawford Street. And that will be very much part of our takedown process and supplemental filings with the Planning Commission, is the development of a public open space plan that activates these areas and makes them programmable, makes them exciting destination locations.
Hey, real quick.
Next slide,
Boris.
please. Councilman, go ahead.
Did I hear you correct that you were going to be looking for another parking tax diversion for Block G?
Yes, that is correct. That when we were in front of the URA back in the fall, we were looking for a parking tax diversion for the entire Lower Hill Parking District. And this would be the second phase after Block E.
And Councilman, our expectation would be similar to how we're pursuing the monetization of the city portion of that for the Housing Opportunity Fund, which I can update in a future slide here, a couple slides ahead. You know, this would add to that. It's not as big as the Block E parking tax diversion which was 850 cars. This would be just over 100 cars.
Okay, thank you.
That's I would just note the obvious, which is that that's not really just a URA question. That's also a city council question.
Yes,
they've got to approve that. So
yeah, and several years ago we adopted policies at the URA to have the board validate those to make sure that the public benefit, you know, from the parking tax diversion before that goes to city council. So that's part of why, you know, that was raised through the process back in the fall and today.
I have a question. Actually, I also want to note, just for the record, sorry for the interruption, but I want to note that I think we were joined by Representative Gainey. I saw him pop up on my screen a minute ago. So I think we have all 5 board members are in attendance now. Yeah, there he is. And I actually had 2 questions. We had a question pop up on the chat screen here from the public about infrastructure. So I also wanted to ask, are you guys preparing a stormwater mitigation plan that's consistent with the city ordinance on stormwater? And similarly, do you plan to have a clean construction diesel retrofit plan for the construction of this stuff?
I'm happy to answer that first question, Sam, and provide follow-up offline for the second question. But for the first question, absolutely. The stormwater plans, stormwater mitigation plans will be consistent with city guidelines. And a lot of, actually what you see on the screen right now, where you see parcels G4 and F2, some of the open space parcels in the first commercial phase, while you see in a lot of the renderings improved conditions at grade with plaza spaces and green spaces and stairs and ramps, below that public open space is a very significant amount of stormwater infrastructure that will accompany this first phase that will meet the requirements prospectively for this entire district.
Thanks. So,
and just if I could continue mentioning those initial parcels. So the G1 parcel, that's the subject of takedown 10, that's in front of the board for preliminary approval in May. That's about 1.51 acres, and the tower sits on that. The complementary public open space on the G4 parcel is about 0.6 acres. And we've submitted a letter of intent on that, and we'll soon be completing a more formal takedown notice for the G4 parcel. I will note on this slide, I don't know if everyone has it in front of them, but right in the middle of the G4 block, there are a couple of orangey brown squares. Those speak to the kiosk plan. A plan to kind of activate the open space with local, likely minority-owned businesses in the food service industry, and we would seek to find ways to work with Catapult on ways to make those centers for additional incubation and support of small businesses, as we have on the E block, where we've worked with the URA and the Catapult program to identify space in our E block development for more retail-oriented businesses along Wiley Avenue. Next slide, please. I think actually the next couple of series of slides I can go through in the next minute or two. Just we provided some indication of where the architectural plans stand at this point. Slides that indicate the typical floor plan, and here the cross section of the building are indicative of where we are currently with the Gensler design process. We'll be submitting kind of a more detailed plan for the Planning Commission over the course of the coming weeks, and expect to have more advanced plans prepared for submission to planning for FLDP consideration in late May. And I think the next slide would be my last slide. I just wanted to go back, and I think I just referenced this in my comments about Block E. We had indicated that the Block E project came with some very exciting community assets, not just the garage, and not just a large music venue, but a chance to support growing local businesses through the Catapult incubator with URA's assistance. We note that on the plans. We're going to be working with the city to further advance plans for a public safety facility on the Bedford Avenue side of Block E. And on the leasing front, in spite of some of the uncertainties in the current market, we've actually advanced some discussions with prospective local operators for a smaller size music venue, food and beverage establishment that would certainly complement not just Live Nation, but would really complement the overall vision for an inclusive and very diverse mixed-use district. I think Kevin Acklin has additional updates on where we stand on our Block E commitments.
So just to finalize, thank you, Boris, with Block E, you're working with the city on the Rescue 2 on Bedford, as Boris mentioned as well. Very exciting conversations as recently as last week on a potential small music venue right at the corner. And what you're looking at is the corner. Of course, this is a massing diagram. The building on Block E will not look like this. But some of these are commitments that we made back in the fall to the board, the SEA and the URA board and the community, that we're very excited to proceed. And certainly can also get started with conversations on Catapult, how we program, how we work with the Hills EDC and other organizations on, selecting a pipeline of qualified entrepreneurs who would benefit from, this commitment that we're making. If you go to the next slide. So here it's a little jumbled. Of course, we can provide this to the board. I think you do have a copy. What this is a chart that shows a number of commitments and action items that have been made under the term sheet, which was agreed to amongst the development team, the URA and the SCA board back in the fall, such as the Rescue 2 station. And this is something that we'll be presenting to the CSIP tomorrow. We've been engaged, as Boris mentioned, with bi-weekly meetings with the CSIP, and the CSIP is the guide through which all of the community benefits and all the social equity impacts of this entire development is being pursued. And so every other Friday, the Penguins host a meeting on an alternating basis with the Hills CDC and the Executive Management Committee. Spend a couple hours together. Councilman Lavelle is there, other folks from the committee to talk about, advancing the CSIP goals and aspirations that we all agreed to several years ago. Recently, the CSIP made an offer that was accepted for an administrator to get started, and so that'll be happening very soon. So now it's perfect timing now that we have some momentum in leases and transactions proceeding on the Lower Hill development. It's of ultimate importance that we advance not only the goals in the CSIP, but also the additional commitments that were made. And so this is a snapshot chart. If the board can take a look at this, provide comments back to us. We intend to keep this updated on a regular basis. This is meant to be a bit of a scorecard that we can show continuous progress on what we're doing, not only with BPG, but also with Energen on the commitments they've made with respect to housing. Just to walk through these, the Ammon Recreation Center, we have a project plan that we've circulated to the board that we'll be also talking to the CSIP committee about how we plan to advance that project, coordinating with Macedonia Church. We also have a project plan with Partners for Work to build a first source center in the Hill to serve as a single stop shopping to source workers for our proposed development as well as others, working with the building service and hospitality organizations about having post-construction training. And then also, that plan has also been circulated to staff at the URA and SEA, and we'll also be talking with the CSIP members. For curtain call, we actually have Walter Hood, who was the artist under contract. We'll be starting soon a community engagement process around where that project lives. We want to make sure that we don't just decide where on the development it happens, but have that be a community driven conversation. And then also with respect to FNB, we have a very robust plan, a draft of which has been circulated to staff at both authorities, and we'll be reviewing with the CSIP committee about how we make sure that FNB, as part of this development, has a maximum impact with respect to the community. So again, this is a chart. If folks can, over the next couple of weeks, give us comments back about what additional information, this is something that we'll keep updated. If you go to the next slide.
Can I just, before you advance to the next slide, this is sort of a helpful snapshot, and I appreciate it. I think it's really important for the board and also the public to sort of track the commitments that were made on prior parcels as additional parcels are taken down for development. So I think this is really helpful. Can you just confirm that the Intergen application that went to the Housing Authority reflected the depth and levels of affordability commitments that we had targeted? I think it was 20% at 50% AMI.
Yeah, Sam, I think there's some ongoing conversations with staff about that. I'm not sure if Intergen's on the call. Okay. But certainly our goal is to make sure that what the commitments were made as part of the term sheet are carried through, as that project advances. So we can have a follow-up conversation, but I can get some more details on
okay,
what specifically.
There's also a question that came in on the public chat stream here, which is that our BPG and PAR are planning to revise the PLDP, the preliminary land development plan, as part of the development of this block.
Boris, do you know?
Yes. Just the vacation of Lower Wiley Avenue will require some level of revision to the PLDP. Okay. In our initial zoning analysis for the proposed development, we're actually very squarely aligned with just about every other element of the PLDP and the zoning code. But the fact that Lower Wiley doesn't continue past Logan all the way to Washington Place and creates the area for the stormwater infrastructure and the public open space, that is a change from the PLDP and will require an update.
Thanks.
Yeah, and as Boris mentioned, the purpose of that would be to create that dramatic open space at the bottom that really is inspired by the CAP project to create a natural connection, an additional 4 acres above and beyond what this development is required to do under city code. So the next slide. Again, shows a little bit about the community amenities, the public investments that are being made here. We are pursuing an energy district. Clearway previously had invested in a cogen facility located adjacent to PPG Paints Arena. They since had acquired Duquesne University's cogen facility. Instead of having each of these buildings on its own system, we are pursuing under the mayor's direction for district energy a robust plan. And so that'll be part of the community conversation, moving forward. We've already talked about the open space. The future phase of the development will include a large open food hall, which we think will create, which is right now, this is a bit of a food desert. for the community, coordinating, of course, with some efforts that the Hill CDC is doing up the middle and upper hill. We think that would be an anchor for a lot of small local food businesses to set up shop and do some great things. And we've already talked about parking and that impact on Block E. The next slide. So again, in terms of public impact, we as Boris mentioned, Gensler in our construction firm will be committed to open and inclusive procurement. A lot of that has already started, and we hope to have some further updates here over the next several weeks. We've had some good conversations with minority-owned businesses, investors, who we think would be participant of this. This development itself, that will be before the board in May, will alone generate $6 million, we estimate, in LRTA funding for the Greater Hill Reinvestment Fund. And for folks who are on the phone at the meeting who may not be aware, 50% of the value of that LRTA is committed back to the URA for further investment into the Middle and Upper Hill District. And so this single development itself alone will generate about $6 million. And one of our commitments is to make sure that shovels are turning in the Middle and Upper Hill District at the same time that they're happening on the Lower Hill. So I give a lot of credit to the URA, Councilman Lavelle, Diamante, and your team with respect to the Center Avenue plan. A lot of that funding, potentially could be directed to make sure that those projects advance. Construction itself will be about just over 1,300 people. Job creation, about 2,000 people. Again, FNB is currently based in Pittsburgh, but this is a job growth opportunity. They do have a presence in Raleigh in the South. And instead of that job creation, they're the second largest bank in the Commonwealth. As they grow, those will be Pittsburgh-based jobs, family sustaining wage jobs that will happen here in Pittsburgh. So that is the business case for this to be happening. This isn't just moving jobs over from the north side to the Lower Hill. This is a substantial commitment from FNB to grow their business and have additional job growth for well into the future here in the city of Pittsburgh. And so that's a commitment that's being made. Those jobs could have easily gone south. And so that's a commitment on their front. We've already talked about it's about 2.5 acres of open space. This is a LEED ND district. We expect this to be a LEED certified building, and the anchor tenant has made substantial commitments to expanding. There are already partnerships in place between FNB and the community that, as part of this development, specific commitments will be made to advance. And on the next slide, this is a summary of a several-page plan, a draft of which, an outline of which was circulated to staff and to the board. We'll be reviewing this also with the CSIP committee. There are a number of commitments that FNB will be making as part of this development, one of which is monetizing the offsite LRTA for the Greater Hill Reinvestment Fund. We had a meeting with URA and representatives of FNB back in February to talk about how that could be structured to advance. Instead of those LRTA dollars trickling in over time, that could be monetized up front and have a more dramatic and current impact on projects in the Middle and Upper Hill District. Benefiting from that structure that we put in place several years ago, this project itself could advance that. FNB has an existing relationship with the Hill District Federal Credit Union. So we've had several meetings with Richard Witherspoon. When we met with the DRP committee, we filed this project with the DRP back in January. We finally had our presentation just several weeks ago, had great, robust conversation around how FNB can advance their commitment to the Hill District. One of the ideas was about creating a home investment program, a mortgage program with the Hill District Federal Credit Union. We've had follow-up conversations about how to make that investment. The Hill Credit Union has done great work for residents and businesses in the Hill District. FNB has an existing relationship that we're seeking to expand. The parking tax diversion, which again was already approved for Block E, the 25% portion of that under Councilman Lavelle's leadership will be directed to the Hill District Housing Opportunity Fund administered by the URA. F&B is already committed to monetizing that portion to have an immediate impact positively for Hill residents, and that's something that we're currently pursuing and advancing. Additional partnerships, as I alluded to earlier, on the SBA loan programs to help with COVID relief, as well as the URA's projects and programs. F&B is a natural partner for helping to coordinate on that. NPP programming, an opportunity through the state program to partner with Hill District-based organizations, and also a number of community wealth building and special initiatives, the Bank On program, and others that we feel could be of dramatic impact. Again, this is the area where Councilman Lavelle has charged us to shoot high, challenged us to take a look at the Detroit program that JP Morgan put into effect. It's one that F&B is working through the details now of how do we make this happen. Again, these are commitments that are being made that we're seeking to advance to actual results as this development continues. But again, this is reflective of a bank that is not just building a building on the lower hill, but is relocating its headquarters to the Hill District, and is very excited. They were the primary lender and tax credit investor in the YMCA project on Center Avenue. Their bent is a community bent. You know, they're seeking a big bet as part of this investment in a very difficult environment, and you know, financially. But this is the reason, and what I'm most excited about is the number of direct community impacts that this investment will have on the Hill District. So if we go to the next slide, any questions for me? I'm just
yeah, I was going to ask you to pause and see if there are board questions on any of those commitments.
No, but
I think.
Hey Sam,
Sorry,
I just
go
wanted
ahead.
to acknowledge the chat as well.
Yeah, I think so. There's a comment in the chat that I think is actually really helpful. As we move forward between now and next month's meeting, I think it's going to be important, Kevin, to be able to clearly identify and track what were the commitments that were made as a part of the CSIP, and how are we making, how are we doing in progress with respect to those commitments, which commitments were made as part of, you know, the prior takedowns for prior parcels, and how are we tracking those, and then what are the new commitments for this particular block. So as we're thinking about how to present this information and how to think about it over the coming weeks, I think those are sort of three distinct buckets, and we need to be thinking about and evaluating all of them at the same time.
So we've taken, and I think that's a great comment. Obviously, the previous commitments I summarized on a previous slide. We've broken up the CSIP into, I think, over 200 potential action items. Some of those are responsibilities, obviously, of the development team, of the city, of the community. That's something that we've been working on that we'll be presenting to the CSIP committee. That's been a conversation around how do we collectively advance that partnership to have, you know, to maximize our positive community impact. And certainly these commitments, they've been manifested in draft plans that I've circulated to I believe that the board has. So if there are comments on those, please get those back to me. We expect to have, even before May, some of those commitments already being converted to results.
Thanks.
Sure. So Boris, you want to pick it back up?
Yeah, sure. And you know, I'll just echo those sentiments and say that, you know, as a development team working on the commercial parcels, we've affirmed our commitment to meeting the CSIP plan, and are excited to be working with Gensler in designing this new headquarters for F&B. Largely, as I said earlier, because of Gensler's expertise in community engagement and facilitating you know, large-scale, transparent, very inclusive procurement and workforce development efforts. And these next few slides were really part of a much larger presentation that Gensler has recently made to the CSIP EMC. These slides were also used most recently last week in our DRP board meeting with the Hill CDC stakeholders, and just kind of capture the essence of some of the initial successes that Kevin mentioned as they relate to the pre-development and design efforts for the F&B tower. A little bit of level setting. The typical URA project will have targets of about 25% DBE participation. That's 18% minority business enterprise, 7% women-owned business enterprise. In the case of projects on the lower hill, the CSIP sets a higher bar. That bar is 45% of participation across the following breakdown: 30% MBE, 15% WBE. Very high bar, very aspirational, and we've hit the ground running with Gensler's help in meeting those requirements. If you could, the next slide. I think the focus has been on starting with businesses that are based in the lower hill, moving then on to businesses in Pittsburgh, identifying Pennsylvania companies and Pennsylvania certified DBEs, and then looking for firms that are based across the nation to support with the M and WBE objectives. Next slide. Again, one of our reasons for selecting Gensler and being excited about working with Gensler is their familiarity with Pittsburgh and their ability to hit the ground running on and working with the Pittsburgh-based design and engineering community. Gensler has ongoing work presently, not just on the lower hill, but they're working with the large airport redevelopment project, and as such have been very engaged with conversations with design firms that are able to assist this effort. We've also worked directly with the Hill CDC in meeting one of the CSIP goals that I believe was the point of one of the questions that came in through the chat. So one of the objectives of the CSIP is to build a robust database of M and WBE firms. We started with a much smaller grouping of businesses that have been identified by the Hill CDC. I think the starting point was somewhere in 20 or 30 companies. Over the course of the last year, we've been able to grow that database to well over 300 firms that are now identified as being potential points of support in our pre-development efforts, in future construction efforts, and certainly in the operations of these properties. We've shared these, the firms that we've identified, not just with our fellow developers at Intergen, but we've worked now with the SCA, with the airport project, and other projects across the region to identify opportunities to put these local and minority women-owned firms to work on more immediate opportunities. Next slide, please. So here's where we are. I mean, we're still early in the process, but we're well over $1.5 million. We're working towards $2 million of commitments to both minority and women-owned firms in the design of the G Tower. We're very excited about the engagement that's been led by Gensler, and excited about the opportunities for smaller firms, and like I said, minority-owned firms that would not otherwise have opportunities to work on such a large-scale effort, to work on a project as iconic and as critical and as the Lower Hill project will be, and as certainly the initial phases of that project, Block E and Block G, will be. And moving on to the next slide, again, maybe difficult to see a little bit for folks. A lot of things going on in the slide, but just a summary of where we are in the process. We are in April. We're looking forward to our preliminary SEA and URA approvals next month. Last month, we did complete the LOI for Block G4. That's the adjacent public open space. We hope to catch that up to the Block G1 tower and make sure that those projects go through takedowns together. We're also looking forward to additional community engagement, for the time being through virtual channels, as we have with the DRP and with the CSIP EMC. But just as soon as we can, and just as soon as it's declared safe to do so, we look forward to being in front of a much larger community gathering, likely at the EIC, to further introduce this project and the many workforce and procurement opportunities that this project will have for the local community. I think that's the extent of our prepared slides.
Great, thank you. Very thorough presentation. Any questions from board members? Or any other comments?
I had a quick question about the MWBE participation. Is the priority on local businesses, or are you including within your numbers national or out-of-state MWBE firms as well?
Very good question. As one of the slides tried to identify, the priority was to start with local businesses. But in shooting for these very significant and very substantial objectives around procurement, we recognize that we'll need to expand the search. And in some cases, we will look for regional and national companies to augment the initial efforts with local companies.
Thank you. And in future presentations, would you be able to include that breakdown as well of local versus out-of-state and national?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thanks.
Great. So I just want to say again, this was a presentation for board and public consumption, and it